But Twitter, basically, I think the strength of Twitter is the fact that, number one, it creates this sort of instant, direct IV level communication where a person can sign on and they know what you had for breakfast this morning and whatever you decide you wanted to share. Obviously, the drawback with Twitter is the fact that you're limited to 140 characters at a time, and so the question becomes, how do you just, unless you're really good at one-liners, it's hard to capture that. And I think that's one of the things we tend to struggle with. So Twitter, you can literally just set up, if you're not already on, you can just send a text message to 40404. You can follow people. Just type the word follow and then whatever their handle is. If you want to look up who someone is, you can write out, just for instance, you could do who is, and then and you find out, and then if I put that into my Twitter feed, then it'll ping back from the Borg at Twitter will respond back to me and tell me that Ben and TN is me, and a little bit about me, and some information, and what my last tweet was, and what I had for breakfast, and what I'm wearing today, those sort of things. So there are some great ways to be able to get and share information. You can also send direct messages, so there are ways that you can set up your account so that you could send a message to an individual Twitter user. For me, that's been really helpful, actually, because I do try to keep my cell phone number from being out there in the general world, but I can get a message onto my phone by way of Twitter that allows me a little bit of a buffer, so that I can direct message with people and it comes through as a text message, but it gives me that 1 degree of separation, so I'm still, they don't necessarily know how to call me at 3 in the morning, which is helpful because I'm a therapist, and so I do get those calls sometimes. I think the Twitter phenomenon, again, one of the things that I became very interested in was looking at how information was shared during the Arab Spring uprising and what happened in Egypt. And I think all of us who saw an opportunity of a great, powerful dictator and leader who had a pretty strong grip on power and control of information and official state channels of TV and communication, and how that was subverted and undermined by a group of people who finally just said enough. This act of injustice that has taken place, what spurred that was a great act of injustice where a person was killed, and it seemed to be for almost no reason, and it was important to tell that person's story. And so I think it was 150,000 people showed up for a Facebook event, and they started sharing information on Twitter. But you had people that were able to share that information in real time, and so we're getting updates, and well, this is so interesting, on official state TV they're telling one story, and our national news is telling another story, and then Twitter is telling another story entirely, where you're starting to see, here is a picture of where I am standing as they're throwing firebombs at me, and no, we're trying to be peaceful, we all need to stay together. There was a sense in Tahrir Square of people trying to remember, what's the purpose here? We're not trying to be violent. That's not our goal. We need to stay together. The core of this movement is not about revolution or violent revolution or overthrow of the government, as much as it is about addressing these grievances and speaking the truth and trying to seek peace and legitimate avenues of power. And it's really hard to do that in an effective way unless you've got some shared communication tools. And so one of the things that I think we do most importantly as religious communicators or as leaders in communication is to be able to find language that uplifts and edifies, but also language that people can rally around. You think of some of the sayings, remember the Maine was the one in the newspaper, back around the turn of the last century. And, that became a rallying cry that launched people into action. I think that's an important way that we can use Twitter, by finding those simple phrases that help to capture the core of that message or the spirit of that event. It's being able to capture that information in a way that people remember later on. What did we do? What did we experience? What did we share together? And so I tend to tweet during sermons on Sunday morning, and And then it shows up later on my Facebook feed, and my pastor says, "Thank you for the very nice thing you said about the sermon today." Or, "I saw you disagreed with this," and, so we have this ongoing conversation. How many of you run into a challenge? Yeah, go ahead.
I am bothered, really bothered, by people using electronic items in a worship service. Help me see beyond that.
It's important. That's a great question. And honestly, I think it's one of those things that I have to kind of personally struggle with as well, that I want to make sure that I'm not distracting from other people's experience. I don't know that there's a one easy answer to that. I think, different communities are going to have different ways of doing it and different ways of responding. I think for many people, there probably are people sitting in the church who are looking over my shoulder thinking, shame on him.
No, I just want to, I personally want to get beyond it.
Yeah, and I don't know.
I really am genuinely saying.
For me, and the reason I do what I do, why I send tweets during church, is that for me, I recognize that I'm part of a spiritual community that is broader and greater than the physical present community that I'm in that room with at that time. For me, and again, this is just speaking as a Christian, as a member of what I consider the body of Christ, I realize that I'm in this physical space where I am being met by God in this community with others, but I'm also part of a greater community. I'm a member of a Presbyterian church, but I'm also a member of a presbytery. The presbytery is a member of a denomination. The denomination is a member of a broader church. The church is a member of a broader human community. And so for me, this is a way that I express and experience my encounter with God in a way that speaks to that broader spiritual community of whoever is out there. It's my message in a bottle. I'll just throw it out there in the bottle and hope that somebody gets my message. And who knows, maybe someone will be encouraged by it. My experience with my pastor is that he's someone who's a member of a church that maybe up until 2 years ago was a dying church. It was a church that was declining in membership. The membership was aging. I bring my 3-year-old daughter, and I've doubled the size of Sunday school in the 3-year-old's class because there's only one other kid, and and it's important, right? So how do we? But from there, I brought my 3-year-old, and then I start sending tweets, and my friends who live in East Nashville with me start saying, "So tell me about this church you're a part of. What's the deal? What's going on there?" And now they, on a Sunday morning, whereas ordinarily they might be sitting home watching Joel Osteen or whatever else they're doing, they have an opportunity now to feel like, "Hey, Ben, I'm glad I got a chance to be a part of your experience today. It sounds like there's something special that's working for you there. Tell me more about that." I just got an evangelism opportunity, which is great. So I love that. It's an opportunity for me to tell the story and share my faith and share it in a way that hopefully makes those points of contact.
And I think part of what I'm hearing is having the challenge with it, and I've heard other people say it too, is there's the connotation or the impression that they're playing games and, doing Angry Birds of other stuff, but people are actually connecting to their outside world. And I know other people just like you who have said, "Oh, well, tell me more about that," and we've had visitors to our church. Well, you didn't join us yet, because someone was in church tweeting about a sermon, and they've come to visit. And so if we just sort of change our paradigm from they're playing games to they're connecting, the person who falls asleep during the sermon is doing no evangelizing. They're not doing anything. But the person who's tweeting may be connecting your service to someone who's unchurched or not saved or whatever you want to call it, and maybe visiting, maybe coming back. This may be the thing they need instead of doing the community thing of dropping flyers off to the houses near your church. And this is the new flyer. This is the new door hanger. This is the way to reach door to door. Maybe people across the city, who knows where they are. It's just a different way of doing what we've always done to invite people into our churches. This is just another tool.
Absolutely.
I'd be interested to hear your comments on this idea that there seems to be on one side, the need to feel relevant and important and significant in what you're saying matters. On the other side, you're throwing needles into a hay field. So your communications don't matter so much, really. So what do you think about that? How do you approach that?
Yeah, that brings me to the question or the issue of tribes, which Seth Godin, who's one of my personal gurus on marketing communications, I really think highly of the way he approaches things. And if you haven't read Seth's stuff, I mean, the first one that he wrote a while back was called Permission Marketing, and he talks about how what we've done with marketing and advertising over the years has been primarily interruption marketing, some version of, and now a word from our sponsors, where you get people doing what they're already doing, sitting down to watch whatever show is their favorite show, and then you as a sponsor get their captive audience attention because, well, we're going to interrupt now and do this commercial, and then we'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming. And his point is that basically teaches people to ignore you anymore. And that's one of the biggest challenges I think that we find in terms of making sure that we're staying relevant. And there's no easy way to know that for sure, other than just you kind of watch the followers and you see the feedback and you see who responds back, and that whole message in a bottle thing. How do you know when your prayers have been answered? When they've been answered, I guess. I mean, have they been heard? I don't know. Does God care? Is He there? I don't know. But I see responses. I see changes that affirm for me that, okay, maybe there's something going on here that's bigger than me, and that reassures me. I think, yeah, what he talks about is if you earn a person's permission, you turn strangers into visitors, and you turn visitors into attenders, and you turn attenders into members, and you turn members into stakeholders, and you turn stakeholders into investors. And before you know it, you've got people who are, rather than being recipients of ministry, they are the ones who are now doing the ministry, sharing the ministry, which is what you want to see. That, I think for me, that's an important part of that spiritual transformation, is moving from the I focus to the we focus. And so finding ways to earn people's permission is a really important piece. You'll notice if any of you get like campaign fundraising emails, I've been following Barack Obama's campaign since somewhere around 2007, and I've never bothered to really get off the email list. But I swear to you, probably 24 emails in 3 days about donate $3 today and get a chance to have dinner with the president. Hey, this is Barack. Hi, Barack. Glad you're thinking of me today. I just wanted to let you know I hope you'll donate. Hey, this is Vice President Biden. I just wanted to say hey and hope you'll donate. Hey, by the way, you can get a T-shirt. And what they're trying to do is to get you to make that first step, to say, okay, I'll sign up. I'm willing to do something. And so what we are trying to do in terms of that evangelistic process is to make that initial interruption that leads to people wanting to give you permission. That is a really delicate process, right? Because it's so easy for people to get turned off by whatever. I told my Buddhist friend that I'm going to speak at lunch at a religious communicators council meeting about social media, and she responded and said, for some reason that just turns my stomach. I don't quite know why. And I was like, let's talk about that, right? Well, it just feels, because the religion thing, it's all like manipulative and controlling, and I just don't want to be into that. And I don't know. It's like you're teaching people how to be manipulative. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm teaching them how to be real. And maybe that's what's more important anyway, is to be genuine. And the other piece of the answer to the question, I think, is that's the key. It's trusting, and I'm really working on this one, pray for me, is I am going from, I told you I'm Calvinist background, from a belief that I am a sinner who is totally depraved, who only but for the grace of God is hellbound and worthy of damnation, to recapturing a deeper truth about me, that I am created in the image of God and born and created and put on this earth to be a representative of God, and that the Holy Spirit that is within me is also within others, and that I am part of something bigger than myself, and that when I speak, that I am speaking on behalf of God, that God speaks in and through me. And like, whoa, wow, well, that's going to make me think twice about what I say and do, right? Like, that's a pretty big deal. But when I'm being authentically myself, I have that opportunity then, in some way, as we all do, to represent the nature of God. Not just as a man, not just as a white person, as a human being. We all have it. It's in all of us. It's not just in some of us.
And how do you do that in 140 characters?
Right. It's something that I think, again, learning is the art of the one-liner, and I see some people that are just tremendously good at it. I think one of the great things about Twitter, it's when you look at Twitter, if you go online, it says, "What are you doing now?" That's the question they ask you, right? So what Twitter always is, it's sort of a Zen thing. It's like it's always in the present. What's going on at this moment? So people will get a sense of a timeline, and what I've found personally is that, if I'm looking for information or searching or whatever about a certain issue or something that I care about, I'll find people who are posting about that issue at this moment, and then I'll look them up and say, who's this person? Let me take a look and see what they've got to say. And then I'll find out, oh my goodness, this person is doing some really interesting stuff. They seem like they're like-minded. I'm going to see if I'll follow them for a while and do that for a little while, and then eventually I start to find out this person isn't really who I thought they were, or we'll deal with that later. And then there's other people that I make connections with, and we start sharing information, and people that I on the other side of the country, on the other side of the world, that I never would have known or talked to, except for the fact that, hey, we're Facebook friends. So yeah, how do you do it in 140 characters? I think you do it in a way that creates your tribe. Another person who I think is influential in my thinking on this is Malcolm Gladwell, who talked about the idea of the idea virus. How do you create viral messages? And he talks about the fact that viruses are sticky and that they replicate easily. Right? So the truth is, if you really want to do it, you don't want to send a 140 character message. You want to send about a 100 character message, because you want people to be able to retweet you.
That takes up more characters.
And that's right. If you retweet, then you got to, the person's got to put in your name, so you kind of got to squeeze that back even a little bit further. People follow people on Twitter because they know them, or because they think they're celebrities, or because they find some kind of a connection that interests them. There's some emotional hook, right, that gets the person to that point. So you're basically just kind of fishing, just dropping the line in the water and kind of seeing what kind of bait will they bite on. And I think there's a certain measure of what you do that you need to communicate, again, with those sticky ideas that people are interested in sharing. And then part of it is also understanding, I think, your part of a community, or of many communities as well. So again, you speak as a representative of your church. You speak as a representative of a community in Nashville. Again, for me, as a Christian, one of the things that I've come to terms with and come to realize is that particularity matters. The idea that a guy who lived 2,000 years ago in a province out in the Roman Empire from Nazareth is really super important. And again, one of the things I'm coming to learn is that maybe that's not only true of Jesus. Maybe what Jesus was saying is that's true of all of us when he says the kingdom of God is within you. That maybe there's a bigger truth there as well. So particularity matters, and contemporaneity matters. The fact that this is what's going on now. So part of it is, it's what Karl Barth said about sermons, that you have the Bible on one knee and the newspaper on the other. There's a sense of knowing what's going on in your community at this moment right now, but that you're also, as you look at that world, you're also becoming aware of timeless truths that are represented. And that to me is one of the best ways to get the sticky ideas. They have to be relevant to what's going on right now. And so it's finding ways to communicate that not only say, this is what I'm doing, but also say, this is what I'm doing and it matters because I'm connected to you in some way. Does that help?
It helps. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it works.